name is Tyler, and welcome to Context for Kids, Torah portion Vayakhel, which is Exodus 35:1 to 38:20. And Context for Kids is the show where I teach kids really cool tidbits about the ancient Near Eastern context of the Bible, and next year the first century context of the Bible, because I believe that when kids know things that the adults don't know, that it inspires them to learn. And I've seen this change the way families study the Bible together when they can talk about interesting tidbits that they are picking up because they've been taught that, you know what, studying Bible context isn't just for adults. It's for everyone. And understanding the scripture isn't just for adults. It's for kids too. So this week we've got Vayakhel, and you know, it's a really interesting Torah portion. We're going, and this week and next week, it's pretty much going over exactly what God told Moses to do up on the mountain. All right? But now Moses is telling all the people. And before we get into our main topic, which is going to be Tree of Life symbolism in the ancient Near East, I'm going to talk about something really totally cool. There are two guys, Bezalel, and Aholiab. And not only were they given by God through the Holy Spirit the ability to know how to do all of the artwork, all the craftsmanship of the temple. Well, it says that Bezalel was also given the ability to teach. I mean, that's really cool. There's a lot of people in the world who know how to do incredibly amazing things. But you know what? The knowledge dies with them, because not everyone who can do can also teach. So I thought that was a really cool thing that was added in there. Anyway, so this week we're going to talk about something that we see in ancient Near Eastern art all over the place. And I'm really excited about teaching this because when you could go on Google Images, okay, and you type in ancient Near East, and you can find all sorts of pictures. And when we study context, you can look at different cultures and you say, oh, well, I can tell that's Assyrian, that's Babylonian, that's Egyptian's the easiest, right? Egyptian's the easiest. Everybody knows what Egyptian artwork looks like. Hindu, we're going to talk about Hindu art today. And we can look at them and we can see motifs. And one of the big motifs is trees, with one tree in particular. But in temples all over the world, you see, for some reason, we don't know what that reason is, temples around the world are made to look like mountains in gardens. And of course, God's temple is no different. The inside of God's temple was made to look an awful lot like the garden. Which garden? Garden in Eden, with trees on the walls and just a natural setting. But you know what, we'll talk about that some other time. Excuse me, I've got, it's driving me nuts. Okay, got a hair, cat hair. Oh, from my husband's evil cat, but we're not going to go into that today. All right. So you've got a natural setting. You've got trees. You've got mountains depicted. You've got all of these things. But what you see in artwork from just about every culture is a tree of life. And like the fact that everyone has a creation story, everyone has a flood story, well, everyone has a tree of life story. And the tree of life is generally depicted as where humans go to get wisdom. And so I'm going to take you through the artwork from a bunch of different cultures in the ancient Near East and even beyond, even in the farther out east, to show you what they thought of sacred trees. Now, first, there are two different kinds of sacred trees. Of course, the first is the tree of life symbolism, but then we also have something called sacred groves. Now, we're not going to be talking about them so much today, but I want you to know that even in ancient Israel, we see that certain, especially goddesses, were worshipped in groves. You know, they would plant a grove, and the grove would be a sacred area. Okay, first rule of sacred trees is do not cut down the sacred trees. In the ancient Near East, there would be no story about George Washington with his little axe chopping the cherry tree and saying, yes, Father, I have to admit, I chopped down a little cherry tree. Little George would have found himself dead. You did not cut down sacred trees. They were sacred because they were alive, and because they were planted in a sacred grove. All right, so there we get the, let's talk about the tree of life in the garden and the menorah. Now, here is my little menorah that a friend gave me, okay? And this doesn't look anything like the menorah that was in the temple, but we're not entirely sure what the menorah in the temple or the tabernacle looked like. And commentators like Rashi and Maimonides, they had some pretty knockdown, drag-out disagreements about it. But what the menorah has that everyone agreed with, it had 3 legs, so it wouldn't have a base like this, but it would come down, it would have 3 legs. Now the original one was made out of a single piece of beaten gold. Wow, no welding. We've got it designed as an almond tree, okay? As a real literal tree. That's the way God told them to make it. And it was modeled after the tree of life that sat in the midst of the garden. And of course it was in the holy place, because the holy place was representative of the garden in Eden. Then of course the Holy of Holies, where the ark was symbolic of God's actual throne in the Garden of Eden. Because remember, it said God planted a garden in the east. Well, the east of what? God's throne. Because gods in the ancient Near East were always believed to live on holy mountains. And we believe that the reason everybody believed that is because in the beginning, that's exactly what happened, that there was a mountain of God, and there was a garden to the east of it, and there was a tree of life in the midst of it. Okay? All these things came from, because everybody came from Adam and Eve, right? And then Noah. So of course, everyone would have the same stories. Everyone would have the same basic belief system, and then after that, it kind of got corrupted. But in the beginning, we have a system that, we have something that was real, that came from something real. All right, now I'm going to start showing you some pictures from different cultures, because I want you to see that everybody had this tree of life mythology. All right, so our first picture here is from the Hindus, okay, from India. And this tree is called the Kalpavrishka. Kalpavrishka. I've got friends who are from India who could say that no problem. I'm not one of them. So the Kalpavrishka was the Hindu tree of life. It's also recognized in Buddhism as their tree of life. And you see the 4 little god thingies tending the tree all around. That was their job. Because one of the things you're going to find that's funny, actually, I'll wait until we get to Sumeria. So let's talk about Sumeria, because you're going to see something really funny here. So we've got this, here's the Sumerian tree of life. Okay, and you've got some guys, you've got what are called genies. Now they're kind of like men, but they got wings, okay? And they cut these things in their hands, and they kind of look like a lulav, like we would see at the Feast of Sukkot. But this is a pine cone, because pine cones in the ancient Near East were seen as symbols of fertility, because when you open up a pine cone, well, it's full of seeds. Well, they didn't know exactly how this stuff worked, but they had these pine cones, and you see the genies, and they have pine cones, and they're going to fertilize the tree of life. And it just strikes me as hilarious that the tree of life would need to be fertilized by divine beings. And it's not self-pollinating. That just makes me laugh. Okay, so, but I want you to take a look at the picture, at the the guys there, they've got baskets in their hand because the tree of knowledge always bore fruit in every culture. And you would take a fruit from the tree of knowledge, you would collect it. That's what the baskets are for. But I want to show you something funny. I want you to look at their wrists. Okay, now take a quick look. The wrist, it looks like they're wearing a wristwatch. And so, you know, when you look at that, they say, oh my gosh, they're wearing wristwatch. They had wristwatches in ancient Sumeria. Well, no, they didn't. That's what you call an anachronism. That's when we in our modern culture, we look at an ancient piece of artwork, and based on our culture and our understanding, we look and we figure that the guy's wearing a watch because that's what it means to us. But it's just a bracelet. They weren't wearing wristwatch. That's why we always had to be careful. We have to look. We can't take a picture from one culture and say, well, this means something else because this is what it would mean in our culture. So always be careful. Oh, I have got the coolest tip for you. A lot of times you will see these memes out on Facebook and they will claim to be from something. Like this particular one that I just showed you, I've seen it's been claimed to be different things. But if you do this special thing, if you're on Google Chrome and you hover over the picture and you do a right click, it'll say search for this picture on Google Images. And sometimes you can find it. Like that picture that I just showed you was from the palace of Ashur-nasirpal II. Okay? And so we know where that's from. But some people will say, oh, it's Babylonian. Of course, Babylonian and Sumerian, completely different. But people who don't study this stuff, you know, it's like, oh, it looks all the same. But they were very different cultures. So anyway, that is a great tip. When you see a picture and you want to know what it really is, do that right click over the picture on Google Chrome, and it'll give you an option to find out where it's from. And you can often find like a picture from the British Museum, because the British Museum has a lot of this stuff. All right, so let's look at our next picture again. This is Sumerian, and you've got the Anunnaki, which were a type of god with kind of like a divine messenger with bird heads, and they are fertilizing the tree of life. You can see them there with the pine cones. All right, the next one, oh, this is one of my favorite ones. This is one of my favorite ones. This is Oannes, the god of wisdom. These are his priests. All right, and Oannes, now this often gets mistakenly represented as Dagon, but Dagon we know because we've got so much information. Dagon was actually an agricultural god. But Oannes was the god of wisdom. He was the god who rose up out of the oceans and gave wisdom to men. And so you see his priests here harvesting from the tree of life. Now we know that this is Oannes because there was this priest of the god Bel, and he wrote, I think it was in the 3rd century BC, it might have been the 5th century BC, about Oannes and how he was a god with a fish head and fish body, but coming out of his fish body at the bottom, they had feet, and then he had arms, and then he had a man's head under a fish's head. As you can see, this Babylonian relief, carving, that's exactly what we see, and he was a god of that religion. He definitely should know. And that is from a cylinder seal. All right, and of course we see the baskets again. So, but now, here is the one that's going to be really cool. Here's going to be the one that's going to be really cool. Egypt. Now, Egypt, of course, is where Israel came out of. And Egypt had a specific tree of life. See, a lot of the other ones, they had like pine trees or this kind of tree or that kind of tree, depending on what tree grew in their region. But the Egyptians had a special kind of tree of life. And their tree of life was the acacia tree. And if you've been reading through the Torah portions, the word acacia means something to you because all of the wood that was used in the building of the tabernacle and all of the holy furniture was acacia. They believed the acacia was the tree of life. And so it grew everywhere. Acacia grew in Egypt, acacia grew throughout the ancient Near East and in the Near East today, and Israel. So it grew all around those regions. And they thought it was holy wood, so, if that was given to the Israelites on their way out of Egypt, that was a very amazing tribute of the Egyptians saying, not only are we going to give you our gold and our silver and our bronze and our jewels and our dyes and all of our wealth, but we're also going to give you sacred wood because your God is the God of the tree of life, the God of wisdom. Isn't that cool? But that's not it. See, I like to tie it in with Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, whenever I can. So we have the tree of life in the tabernacle, in the garden, and everything around it, pretty much, a lot of the stuff around it is made of acacia wood. And acacia wood, of course, is surrounding the Holy of Holies. Well, not completely, there's curtains. But I'm going to tell you something important about acacia. Acacia has long, nasty thorns. And I think that it's very, very interesting that it was probably acacia that the guards made a crown of and set on our Messiah's head. Sacred wood, a crown made of sacred wood. They didn't look at it that way because they weren't Egyptian. But they made a crown of sacred wood and put it around the head of the coming King of Kings. And as there was acacia throughout the tabernacle and the furnishings were made of it, the fact that Yeshua was crowned with it, to me, was just such an amazing thing to learn. So, that's it for this week, and I hope you learned something. Tree of Life symbolism in sacred groves, boy, you see it all through the artwork. You might want to go online and take a look at some of the stuff, but what I really want you to take a look at, I want you to go to a website. It's the Temple Institute, and I think it's .org, but I can't remember. But if you do a Google search for Temple Institute Menorah, you can see pictures of the menorah that they've made. And it is gorgeous. And they have up-close pictures. It's beaten work. It's wow. Take a look at it because it is going to be lighted when they build the next temple. And that's a very exciting thing for those of us who study the temple and love the temple. Now, there will not be a video next week, I don't think, because I'm getting ready for a presentation in West Monroe, Louisiana on the 13th of March. And I have to prepare a special teaching for you guys for the first Torah portion in Leviticus called Vayakhel. I'm going to explain to you exactly how people in the ancient world looked at sacrifice, because I'll tell you something. It's not the way modern people look at it. And the way the Bible talks about sacrifice is not what we've largely been taught. But I want you to know what it meant to the people in Bible times. So, that's it for this week. I'm praying for you. I love you, and I want you to have a great week studying the Scriptures.